What is going on, everyone? How are you doing? I hope you're doing good, because it is good to feel good. And I am really buzzing from this past weekend, because just this past weekend I attended AEW's All In at Wembley Stadium, and it is hands down probably one of my favourite wrestling events that I've ever attended now. And just, it was, just thinking back from it, it's just like how crazy this all was. And what I wanted to do with this video is talk about my experience from attending, and also just like have a few takeaways from attending the event. So let's talk about it, and you know, I'll talk about how fun it was. Now, originally I did upload a vlog from this event, but it did unfortunately get a copyright strike, so I'm not going to try and re-attempt to upload it, but I will just have like the old snippet of clips here and there, so obviously not including much, and again, don't want to risk getting a copyright strike. So yeah, let's talk about things. So going back and winding the clocks back to about 5 years ago was the original All In, which is often seen as the spiritual precursor and very much the catalyst to what would become AEW just a few months later. You know, the ambition was, All In was like, can we get 10,000 people into an arena in America? And it's like, the next step from that is, like, can we get 80,000 people to fill Wembley Stadium? And it's just wonderful. So when AEW made the announcement last year that they were finally coming to the UK this year, I was immediately pumped, and I was like, I wonder what venue they're going to choose. And I thought, initially I did think it was that they were going to hold it at Fulham's Craven Cottage, simply because of course the Khan family owns AEW, they also own Fulham, and I thought they might just go there. But then they pulled out the big bucks and they said Wembley Stadium, and I was like, oh my god, I've got to go if it's at Wembley Stadium. And crazy to think, the last time a wrestling event happened at Wembley Stadium was SummerSlam in 1992. I wasn't even born then, so there are people who attended All In this past weekend who would have been around when SummerSlam 92 happened. Hell, even some people who were there were probably in that crowd this past weekend. And that's just crazy to think about. Just immediately just walking into Wembley Stadium, I thought, this is just a dream come true. And again, going back to what I was talking about, never thought in my lifetime that I would see a wrestling event take place at Wembley Stadium. And just being there and just soaking in the atmosphere, it was just such a lovely moment. And I mean, I've attended like all sorts of like venues for wrestling over the years, you know. Been to Madison Square Garden, been to the O2 Arena, I went to MetLife Stadium a few years ago for WrestleMania, I've been to the Tokyo Dome for Wrestle Kingdom. It's just, and being at Wembley Stadium was just so cool. Now, talking about some of the matches on the card, of course, gotta go down everything. Even before the matches actually started, there was a little in-ring segment when I got there where Jeff Jarrett came out. He was like insulting the crowd at Wembley and like bigging up like American wrestling. And quite funnily enough, obviously Jeff Jarrett was one of the founding fathers of what is now Impact Wrestling. But then of course Paul White comes out, Anthony Ogogo comes out, and then Grado comes out. Unfortunately, Tony Khan didn't pay the big bucks for Like a Prayer, which I'm not complaining about, but just it was nice to see Grado have a nice little kind of moment on the pre-show where he was able to hit Jeff Jarrett with his guitar, and oh, it's good to see Grado. It's yourself. And do you know what? Now that we're on the topic of All In, obviously, spoiler alert, they did announce they're going to do All In again next year at Wembley Stadium on the August bank holiday weekend, and I'm like, count me in for that. They should do Grado versus Jeff Jarrett next year. They've got a whole year to build to it, and I would be so down for it if they do it. And then starting off with our first match, which was on the pre-show, was the team of Aussie Open and Better Than You Baby, the team of Adam Cole and MJF, for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. Now, I've loved the dynamic between MJF and Adam Cole. Like, they're very much an odd couple, and it just works. Like, you know, MJF is just such a dickhead heel, and I bloody love him. And you know, Adam Cole, obviously the babyface. So the fact that they've been making this dynamic work, and even getting little things like a double clothesline over as a tag team finisher, great stuff. And I will say for Aussie Open, it was quite cool seeing them, because 5 years ago I saw Aussie Open at Progress's Wembley Arena show, and they won the Progress World Tag Team Championships on that night. And then of course they were defending the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships on on the pre-show of All In, which I thought pretty cool. They didn't win, but it was nice to see, obviously, MJF and Adam Cole pick up the victory, and of course, that would play into the little dynamic later in the night. Next up, we had Jack Perry versus Hook for the FTW Championship in an FTW Rules match. Now, I still think it's an absolute crime that since Jack Perry turned heel and he's no longer Jungle Boy, we'll probably never hear Tarzan Boy again, which, if he was still face and still Jungle Boy, I was very much looking forward to him like that playing at Wembley Stadium and us going along to it, but it wasn't meant to be. But I will say, like, you know, it's nice to see Hook, you know, getting a nice big moment. Obviously, he won the FTW Championship. He beat Jack Perry in the ring with the Tan submission, just like his dad would use back in the day. And yeah, big up the Hook, and just nice to see him going strong. Now on to the main show. Of course, we kicked off with CM Punk versus Samoa Joe for the real World Championship. Of course, there's been this dynamic since CM Punk returned to AEW. You know, he's been proclaiming to be the real World Champion, and obviously he never technically lost the AEW World Championship last year after the old kerfuffle that happened at All Out. But I will say he did get a very mixed reaction, but love him or hate him, I just thought it was great to see him in person. You know, had a very good match with Samoa Joe, obviously harkening back to their days in Ring of Honor, and just, you know, Punk still being able to go, I mean, he's nearly 45 now, and he's still able to put on a really decent wrestling match, so good on him. And one of my favourite spots in the match was where, you know, I love the whole Samoa Joe just walks aside when someone attempts like a dive or something, and he just like brushes it off. I loved it. He did it again, and then on camera he did that, and I'm not going to say what that is on YouTube, obviously that's for another site. That was a great little spot. And then bloody pulls out the Pepsi plunge, which is something he's not used. Yeah, even when he was in WWE, he never used the Pepsi plunge, so it was quite cool to see him pull that out and, you know, delivering that to Joe to pick up the victory. And of course, he is still the real world champion, but yeah. But then of course there was all that whole. But it was nice to see that obviously Punk was, you know, having a good time, and, you know, he didn't pick out any fights or anything like that. Wait, what? What do you mean he got into a fight with Jack Perry? We had a trios match, which was the Golden Elite, so Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and Kota Ibushi versus Bullet Club Gold, so Jay White and Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita. I thought, you know what, it's great to see everyone in action, you know, the Golden Lovers, I like the first time seeing the Golden Lovers in person. I'm sure I've seen Kota Ibushi a few times before, but seeing the likes of Kenny Omega and Adam Page in person was like, that was really cool as well. And, you know, them getting to do some cool stuff in that match. And I thought it was pretty special to see, like, you know, Takeshita being the one to pick up the victory, and obviously continuing the story between Kenny Omega and, you know, Don Callis and his associates. So that was good stuff, and big up Takeshita. The next match was FTR versus the Young Bucks, which I thought was an absolutely incredible match and probably one of my favourites of the night. This, of course, was the rubber match between the two teams for their time in AEW. Of course, the Young Bucks got the first victory at Full Gear back in 2020. Then FTR got a victory on Dynamite last year. Then, of course, this being the rubber match and the perfect stage to do it at Wembley Stadium. Great stuff. And I will just say straight out of the bat, like, you know, I can't believe how savage we were. Literally, out of the gate, Wheeler's got a gun, Wheeler's got a gun, and we just did not hold back. That's what I love about UK wrestling crowds. We're just so savage. Like, you know, we can chant anything and it will just get over with the crowd, and that was just silly it was. And even the brief chant of "please don't shoot me," oh, we just need to stop, we do. But honestly, I love a bit of tag team wrestling, and, you know, I love that FTR have really been able to shine since they left WWE, because I always just remember WrestleMania 35 in particular, the Revival, when they were known as that, were on the pre-show of that event, and they lost to Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, now Brian Myers and Matt Cardona respectively, and it was just sad. Like, you know, they're a great tag team, and I just felt like when they came out to the main roster in WWE, there just weren't utilised to their full potential, and now that they are in AEW and, you know, they're really given a chance to shine, great on the lads. Big up the FTR. You know, there was some really great spots throughout this match. I honestly thought there were multiple periods where, like, you know, either team would pick up a victory, and there was so many great near falls. Bloody one point, Cash Wheeler trying a springboard 450, and I was like, that's not what FTR are about. They're not about the flips, they're about the fists. Again, and one of my favourite spots in the match was like literally a picture perfect shatter machine from FTR. So it's literally the finishing spot. It was, of course, the Young Bucks trying to go for the Meltzer driver. Dax Harwood pushes out all the way Matt Jackson, catches Nick Jackson literally into the shatter machine. That was a great spot, and, you know, it got a great ovation. And of course, you know, that's the trilogy completed now. I will say probably they will have more matches down the line, but where we see them, who knows really. Then we had the Stadium Stampede match, so consisting of the Blackpool Combat Club, so Jon Moxley, Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli, as well as Mike Santana and Ortiz, against the team of Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston and Penta del Miedo. Oh man, I tell you what, the original Stadium Stampede obviously was unique because it was, you know, held in an empty arena, or in this case an empty stadium, and, you know, it was done cinematically, so it was able to work. I did think they would be limited to what they could and couldn't do, but there were just some gnarly spots in this match, including one moment where Penta like bashes skewers into Jon Moxley's head, and then like it just comes out like a bloody pineapple or something. That was gnarly, that was, and it just crazy, like how much, not necessarily ultra violence, but just how many like crazy dangerous spots they can get into this. And even at the point where Orange Cassidy was doing this whole shtick with Moxley, and then obviously when he jumps back up and kips up, then Moxley hits him in the back of the head with a fork, and I thought, a bloody fork? Oh goodness me. Sue came out in the white van and just some great stuff. And then Penta came back in red as Penta Oscura. He delivered a great sunset flip powerbomb to Santana from a ladder through a table. That was just a gnarly spot as well. Claudio Castagnoli getting his nice little swing spot in, and just like whenever I know Claudio's been doing it for years, but the fact that he's still able to do it without, like, you know, losing any breath, and just like, I think he got to about 22, 21 or something swings, so bless the man. But in the end, of course, it was the team of the best friends and Penta and Eddie, and they got the victory. Of course, Orange Cassidy delivering a Superman punch courtesy of some broken glass to Claudio, and oh, that was great. Good stuff. Next up, we have the women's four-way match, which consisted of Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker versus Saraya versus Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship. And I will just say, I thought it was quite humbling to see Saraya enter to like a big home crowd. Like, you know, 5 years ago it was the case that she was probably never going to wrestle again and she was prematurely retired. Then when she obviously left WWE and obviously came to AEW, she was then cleared, and, you know, she's been able to have some decent matches since then. I thought it was really heartwarming to see her walk out with her family as well. And literally, it is fighting with my family too. This is the sequel that I envision, and this is the finale, and obviously what happened in the match. That's what I envision. I love the spot where, like, obviously Saraya's mum got in harm's way and Toni Storm punched her, and like, I thought, that's the end of the Outcasts, surely. And even to the point where Saraya just pulls Toni back in the ring and like was like, yeah, we're not friends anymore. Even Ruby Soho tried to ease the tension, but it just didn't work, unfortunately. I thought there was a really cool spot in the match where Saraya had Toni Storm in a Scorpion Deathlock, chicken wing combination, and then Britt Baker delivering a bloody curb stomp to Toni Storm. Then, of course, as the match went on, of course, you know, Britt Baker had Shida in the lockjaw. Then Saraya was able to capitalize with the nightcap on Toni Storm, and she won the Women's Championship, which I thought was really, again, a really humbling move. And I'm hoping that, you know, she can have a decent long reign with that championship. And again, nice that she got to celebrate with her family. great stuff. Again, that's the Fighter with My Family sequel that I want to see. Next up, we had the Coffin match, which consisted of Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage versus Darby Allin and Sting. I thought it was absolutely incredible that Tony Khan paid, again, the big bucks to have Seek and Destroy by Metallica play whilst Darby and Sting entered the ring, and obviously harkening back to Sting's days when he did use that as his entrance music. And also, I just thought it was really cool to see Sting perform in front of a big crowd like that. I know he did perform at WrestleMania 31 back in the day, and the less said about his match on that show, the better. But it was nice to see him just, like, you know, he's in his 60s, and the fact that he's able to just, you know, go at it and still have fun doing it, it's lovely. And, you know, hopefully we've still got him for some time before he does eventually retire, but just, it was great to see him in that match. And even, you know, I've always loved this dynamic between him and Darby Allin in the last few years, like kind of like a protege role, and all the dangerous spots in the match, like even the point where Darby Allin tries a coffin drop and he misses Swerve whilst doing so. That was gnarly. And there was one point during the match where obviously the whole thing with Christian Cage at the moment just being that he hates wrestlers who have dead dads and that. I remember saying, statistically speaking, that somebody in Wembley Stadium has a dead father, and I would love it if Christian Cage just went after them. But oh, it was good stuff, like, you know. And even a nice little fun moment where Swerve tries to push the coffin down, push the lid down on Sting, but then his baseball bat is in the way and it's like, nope, we're still going. And then, of course, Darby Allin hitting Swerve Strickland with the coffin drop, or even onto the coffin, and, you know, incapacitating Swerve, getting the victory. And again, it was lovely to see Sting and Darby still thriving. Again, I really hope we still have Sting for a little bit of time before he does eventually retire. Big up the Sting. Next up, we had Chris Jericho versus Will Ospreay. I thought it was actually really cool to have Jericho come out to Fozzy performing Judas along with himself on lead vocals, and it's just crazy to think, like, ever since he started using it as his entrance music, it's just slowly gotten over, and like that was obviously the largest crowd that had, like, you know, sung that. I think probably the largest crowd that Fozzy have ever performed in front of, so that was cool for him. And then Will Ospreay entering, and, you know, I thought it was, again, really heartwarming to see him enter to, like, his home crowd in front of 80,000 plus. And I found it crazy to think how just over 7 years ago I saw my first Will Ospreay match at a now defunct WCPW show in Newcastle, and that was in front of a few hundred people. And then going from that to then performing in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, I was so happy for the man, and like my reaction here probably just proves that.
7 years ago, I saw my first Will Ospreay match at an independent show. He's performing in front of 80,000 people here at Wembley Stadium. I'm so fucking proud of him. Ospreay!
You know, it was nice. I just thought, you know, it was a nice dynamic between the two. Just getting the chance to wrestle. Ospreay obviously delivering his high momentum offense to Jericho, and I love the fact that Jericho's in his 50s now and he's still able to put on a decent match, you know, obviously doing the Lion Soul, Walls of Jericho, Judas Effect, Code Breakers, you name it, he's still got it. And like, again, he's 52, and, you know, it will be sad when one day when Chris Jericho does retire, but I bloody love the man. And with Will Ospreay, like, you know, the man's 30 now, and the fact that he's still going and he's still got a lot of great years ahead of him, I'm bloody hopeful for the man and, you know, what he does next. Because I know on Dynamite just earlier in the week, he did mention that, you know, his contract with New Japan's coming up in a few months' time. I would not be surprised if he ends up signing for AEW, because I think he'll just have a great time there. I think he'll be like one of the biggest things in the company. And I definitely see him, like, you know, a year, maybe even a year's time, if he does sign with AEW, being on the next All In. That would be really cool. Next up, we had the AEW World Trios Championship match consisting of House of Black against the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. One little touch I didn't notice live was that Buddy Matthews of the House of Black had a lantern in memory of the late Bray Wyatt. I thought that was a really nice touch watching that back, and, you know, obviously they're a bit spooky. Bray Wyatt was obviously a bit spooky, so that was a really really heartwarming tribute that was. Then of course the Acclaimed entered, and I'm just gonna play the sound of the rap here. I'm not gonna include the clip of it, but I will just say Max Caster doesn't hold back. Let me just play the sound clip of this. And also, just one thing I love is how they've gotten the act of scissoring over like Anthony Bowen's absolute national treasure, and the fact that they've obviously got Billy Gunn to their side as well. Obviously there's been a little bit of talk about will Billy Gunn ever wrestle again, and here he is, performing in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, and it was the biggest scissoring party of all time. And I'd like to think there were some people in the crowd, like especially young kids, being like to their parents, what does scissoring mean? I'm like, can I scissor you, Daddy? And oh, it's silly stuff, but it works, and I'm really happy that, you know, the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn were able to pick up the victory. And again, Anthony Bowen's after the match, you know, doing the world's biggest scissoring party, you know, scissor me daddy ass. How that's gone over is beyond me. Like, there have been some crazy things that have gone over in wrestling, and I bloody love it. And then finally we come to our main event, which was MJF vs Adam Cole for the AEW World Championship, going from the first match on the pre-show of the night to ending off in the main event. It was absolutely special, and like, you know, Adam Cole, I mean, I saw Adam Cole perform at NXT TakeOver New York a few years ago, and honestly one of my favourite matches of all time against Johnny Gargano. That was some great stuff, that was. But then I thought, you know what, he's going to have a great match with MJF, and sure enough, they did. Like, you know, all the dynamics, obviously all the taunting back and forth, you know, obviously will they, won't they turn on each other. All these little dynamics were coming into play, even to the point where, you know, a brainbuster to MJF on the stairs couldn't keep him down. And even little things like, you know, tombstone pile driver on the announce table couldn't even keep MJF down. Then a bloody double clothesline, in which both men take each other out, and I thought, they can't end it like this in a bloody double pinfall. But then of course, I remember like us getting so adamant with the reaction, like obviously Justin Roberts announcing this match was ending in a draw. I was like, oh, surely they can't end like this. And then of course MJF so passionately saying this. And then of course the match resumes as normal, and like, you know, again back and forth. There was a lovely moment where Bryce Remsburg, the referee, was down. The whole, like, you know, they were trying to do the whole Eddie Guerrero, you know, lie, cheat, and steal, you know, with the steel chair. But I just loved it, like they're throwing it back and forth. In that moment I initially thought Chuckle Brothers, to me, to you, to me, to you. Then of course Bryce then goes down again after a Panama Sunrise gone wrong from Adam Cole. Even Roderick Strong comes out to try and be like, yeah, you need to now turn on MJF so you can win the championship. But obviously Adam Cole didn't want to put his friendship in jeopardy, but even with a cheeky little roll up from MJF retaining the championship. And again, obviously Adam Cole contemplated turning on MJF after the match, but even the power of friendship couldn't stop that. So good on them, and the fact that they got to hug it out in the ring and celebrate in front of 80,000 people. Great stuff. And then of course after the match they announced, of course, that AEW is coming back to Wembley Stadium for All In next year on the August bank holiday. Even Tony Khan came out at the end to punch the message home that, you know, we're coming back, and, you know, bigger and better than ever next year. It's gonna be great. And yeah, that was my experience from All In. I had a really great time again. And I love wrestling. I thought, you know what, this year I've seen some good wrestling already. Obviously I went to WWE's Money in the Bank last month, as well as the SmackDown the night before. And then it was just great to just experience just like it's at Wembley Stadium. Again, I know I keep repeating it, but I never thought it would happen in my lifetime. But we bloody got it, and I've absolutely loved it. and I'm now waiting again for next year. But I will just say one of my biggest takeaways from the event is that, you know, I will just want to comment quickly on the whole thing about tribalism. Like, you know, I've been to AEW shows, like the one this past weekend at All In. I've been to WWE shows, and many of those over the years, and I know there's this whole dynamic recently at the moment where it's like this whole thing with tribalism, like you can only like one thing or the other, and I just completely unsubscribe from that. I really don't care about, you know, people's opinions, because I like arseholes. Everyone's got one, and you know, I will say, like, you know, I like watching AEW, I like watching WWE, but I will acknowledge there are things I don't like about the respective products. But I don't want to let that distract me from, you know, saying that, oh, I can only like one or the other. I just want to enjoy the wrestling. I just want to enjoy myself and have a bloody great time. And even the wrestlers themselves want to wish each other, like in respective promotions, you know, the best of luck in what they're doing. So yeah, wrestling, great stuff. If you don't like something, that's fine. If you want to watch something and just binge watch it, go ahead. But anyway, sorry, aside from that little note, I got a little sidetracked there, but I do just love the love of wrestling. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you again at All In next year. Potentially, maybe, probably, yeah, let's do it again next year. Thank you for watching, guys, and I will leave you with some advice, and that's always to enjoy yourself, stay safe, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Thank you for watching, and peace.